Okay.
We did our presentation on the Taiwan people of Taimali.
By Mankey.
By Mankey. And we chose this because when we first started class, I mentioned I had the opportunity to see an Aboriginal wedding through my Taiwanese friend. She's not Aboriginal, but she had this Aboriginal wedding with the Taiwan people of Taimali, which is a smaller area. And so we got the chance to move. We got the chance to go. I was able to go 3 times to the village and see 3 kind of big activities, and May got to go to one to see the most magnificent of them all. And so here I'll first give you a little history about the Taiwan people, just so that you can kind of compare with what we've seen recently. And the whole point of this presentation, or what we've discovered, is how, in general, there's a trend with globalization, especially Aboriginal or minority groups kind of losing a lot of their culture and losing language. But with what we've seen recently in the past 4 months, it seems to be the opposite with the Taiwan people, at least of Taimali. Their culture seems to be flourishing, and it's really amazing to see. So hopefully we'll show you lots of pictures, and we have some videos so you can kind of see what we've seen. And yeah, so first, this is just a really brief kind of history, just because we didn't really talk in detail about the Taiwan people. So this is the general region of where the Taiwan people inhabit. The majority, thank you, is the green. So the current population of the Taiwan people is around 86,000, but that number is really different from every source that I saw. So I think it changes or varies. That was from the Council of Indigenous Peoples, Executive UN. But that makes it the 3rd largest Aboriginal group in Taiwan, behind the Amis and the Atayal. So as you can see, the Taiwan people are mainly in the south. The majority of Taiwan people are in Pingdong County. But we looked at the Taiwan people in Taimali, so it's a much smaller group. So here I just have the range of the Taiwan peoples from Dawu Mountain in the north to Hunshan in the south. I think it's Aileo in the west to Taimali in the east. The Taiwan were among the 9 original Aboriginal groups to be researched by the Japanese. But there was one point in time when there was a Japanese expert of Aborigines named Ushinosuke Mori. And he decided he had this great idea to make that number 9 a lot smaller, into 5. And so he grouped the Taiwan people with the Puyuma and the Tsailisian, now known as the Rukai, and he grouped them all under Taiwan. And that was later changed back, and they were all given their independent names. But you can see as early as under Japanese rule, as just starting with colonial rule, how cultures must have started to change because they were kind of grouped together with different Aboriginal groups, and that changes kind of who you are. So generally how the Taiwan people were dispersed, kind of into 2 subgroups. It's geographically dispersed. It's the Raval and the Butsul. The Raval are they're on the west Taiwan, and the Butsul are the northeast and south Taiwan. But beyond that, I mean, I didn't look too much into that because it's really confusing. But beyond that, there are 50 more self-governing villages. So there's lots of villages of Taiwan. And just in general, a tribe is composed of a single or many villages. So there's lots of variation within the Taiwan people. This is a little Taiwan baby. She's very cute. As we've spoken about, there's a class structure with the Taiwan people. Again, I found kind of slightly different organizations of the class structure. So this is just the one that I chose to put, but it may be a bit different. But the chieftain and the noble are kind of similar. So there's a chief in the Taiwan tribe who's the leader. And you can tell the chief has a special name, tattoos, ornate clothing, an ornate headdress. The ownership of many wooden statues, artifacts, just pots. And then I believe the chief and the noble are kind of the same class, but the chief is obviously passed down to the first child, be it daughter or son, so female or male can be chief. And then, so if you're not a chief, the noble is a landowner. So they could also, traditionally they could collect taxes, like hunting tax, land tax, water tax, and mountain tax. They could also get full human-shaped tattoos. So I'm sure like Nicole saw it in a museum, like on your arms and chest. So they were allowed to get such tattoos. They also were given a special name, special family name, and a special personal name. Larger house, you could tell by the house, and with specific emblems. Like Taiwan is famous for the 100-faced snake, the silk deer, a human head, or kind of a geometric shape. I'll show you later. We're all, if you saw those, it was quite clear that it was a higher person of a higher social status. And then there's the warrior or the hunter. These are all current pictures, by the way, so this is not what they were before, this is what they're wearing now. And that's similar to kind of marginal nobles, so similar luxuries as nobles, except for the tattoos and the special names. And then last is the commoner, the katikan. And the family members, who is a family member of a landlord who does not share at least one grandparent, so they have to earn their living and rank through labor, and they can raise their status through hunting and working.
Sorry to interrupt, but is that the structure, also the order, like from the leader to the commoners? That would be, okay.
Yeah, that would be the highest to lowest. And also, if you look in this picture, do you see anything different?
Well, yeah.
Amongst the people, what do you see?
Well, the first one on the left looks like really precious ornaments and outfit, and the third person or fourth person, especially the one on the right, is like dressed a bit more poorly.
Well, you're right about the first person because she's a princess. And what's really interesting is that she is a princess of a Taiwan tribe in Pingdong, but she also, the tribe that we studied in Taimali, she goes there and she also participates in a lot of their activities. But when she's with this tribe in Taimali, she's not a princess because it's not her family. So she dresses just like the other girls. And this was the first time I've seen her because this is in Pingdong. And so since she was in Pingdong, she had to represent her family. And so she was a princess, and everyone was eating. And the girls, these are all the girls in Taimali, and they were joking. They couldn't ask her to serve them soup because she's technically, when they're with her in this situation, she's of higher status. So they do still respect that. And so they were making a joke about it, but they really couldn't say like, oh, can you get me some soup? But if they were all in Taimali with her, it'd be fine. They could ask her to do anything they wanted.
So basically just the geographic location is the difference. Basically the people hang out in another area and then they can just talk to each other normally?
Well, now.
Okay.
I think before, I mean, as we've seen before, the territories were so strict. You didn't see other people, you know, you could get your head cut off for going into another place. And even the Taiwan people, we spoke to some of the women and they said before the Taiwan of Pingdong could never go to see the Taiwan of Taimali. They would never cross the mountain, never. Like afraid of disease, or they never got together. So until now. So it's another, even though the culture is changing and it's definitely adapting to a modern time, I think it's really amazing because now you can have all these people together and they're sharing it, and so it's still thriving. So that's basically why I said the modern hierarchy. It's still respected, and especially kind of the chief, and at big occasions, they're still given the head of the table, and certain things such as that. But there's no longer a right to tax, and commoners now can definitely have more rights. Or there's not so much the commoner class, so they could now have wooden statues or pots. That's not as they wouldn't necessarily not be allowed to hold such artifacts. And here are some traditional Taiwan materials. So Taiwan people are quite famous for glass beads, ceramic pots, wooden sculptures or beams portraying, like I said before, portraying maybe like the human head. So you can see, oh, it's kind of hard to see. Can I turn off the light for just a second? Just so you can see that. So you can see there's human heads. And underneath it, you can't really see if it's a 100-pace snake. And then here's some glass beads, and this, a lot of human heads. So this is things that are in, I'll introduce you to Sakini later, but in a man's house in Taimali, so he still has these things. And it's really amazing because you read like, oh, their things have the head and the snake and the silk deer, but they really do. So here again,
you can leave it out.
Okay. So here there's two silk deer and a head and a snake draped over it. And this geometric shape is really common too. Here's another head and a snake. And then lots of clay pots. And these are just stairs. I don't think they necessarily have significance. But yeah, so all of this is still very present, and still lots of people have it in their homes. Traditional houses, so obviously the picture of this house.
Traditional house?
I don't know, this is from the Formosan Aboriginal Cultural Village. That's what it told me. Okay, you go tell them, Professor. Supposedly the homes were asymmetrical, built from slate, shale, and wood with the back wall situated against a foothill.
Their skulls look pretty shabby.
They're clearly not keeping up on cleaning and maintenance. Just kind of like before, if you see a larger house or this large kind of front area, that symbolizes a person of higher class. Especially the front areas will show that it's a gathering space for the village, especially for rituals. And in terms of location, the settlement, obviously natural resources was very important traditionally, so most Taiwan people were situated near rivers for water, for fishing, and then hunting obviously was a very big, or not obviously, but was a very big part of Taiwan culture. Okay, now this is the village that we looked at. This is Laolan village, which is in Taimali. And we kind of looked at how Taiwan culture was revived. And it was revived by this man here named Sakinu. And this village is really special. I mean, I'll tell you the story of Sakinu, but this is where we were introduced, again, by my friend through her wedding, and then they kept welcoming me back. And then I said, I have a student, my classmate, can I bring her too? And they're like, of course. And by the end of going, for me 3 times, her only 1 time, they really treated us like family. It was amazing. So Sakinu and his little baby. Sakinu comes from a traditional family of hunters, quite skilled hunters. But when he grew up, it was a very confusing time for the village, especially his father's era was the most kind of hectic. It was just a cultural confusion because of the years of colonialism. So beginning with the Japanese, as we kind of studied, the Japanese pushed a lot of the Aboriginals out of the mountains, and so they took them away from their home. And hunting, I mean, these are hunters, and that's their class. So that's a huge change in their lifestyle. And a lot of them were forced to fight war for Japan. But then also when the KMT came over, when the Chinese came and colonialized Taiwan, it was another horrible situation. So for example, Sakinu tells a lot of stories, and he has many stories. His father and a lot of the fathers of the village were all either sent really far away to do labor. So his father was sent to Saudi Arabia to do labor, or they were sent on fishing boats for years, like 3 to 5 years at a time, and they were told that they were going to get promoted and get prestige, and so they become captain maybe, so they were excited, but those were quite empty promises, and a lot of it didn't really pan out. And so these fathers of this generation were all gone, and they weren't there for the children, and they weren't there to continue the kind of the culture. And as well, when the KMT came over, they took more land from the Taiwan as well as other Aboriginals, and they took their knives and their guns. So a hunter without his knife, as Sakinu says about his father, it's just he lost his identity without his knife because he was a hunter. And so a lot of them then turned to drinking. They were quite violent. And Sakinu has told stories just about all the young boys in the village were just quite scared of their fathers, and they thought that the fathers of these villages were such scary men, just kind of always drinking and very violent, and they would, maybe be hit. And it wasn't, as Sakinu tells it just wasn't until he grew up and later found out the situation that he realized what happened. And so Sakinu had quite a funny life. He didn't like school. He ran away a lot, stole books because they didn't have money to buy books. And then when he graduated high school, he came to Taipei to join the police academy. And when he graduated, it was in 1996, and it was when a lot of the Aboriginal movements were happening because it was the end of martial law. And he was positioned to stop these protests and to kind of hold them back. And then he realized that they were all Aboriginals. And he had no clue why he was there. And he kind of realized that they were kind of like him. And then the people protesting recognized him. And they called him a Chinese sellout. And they were quite upset with him. And it was in that moment that he says that he was quite shocked and realized that he didn't really know who he was. And he needed to go home and refigure out. So since then, that's what he's been doing. He lived in Taipei for another 10 years working, but every weekend he went back to Taimali and researched his culture and traditions. Because as well, like I said, because Taimali is quite a small portion of the Taiwan people, during this time, during when the fathers were sent away and it was cultural confusion and their land was stolen, there's many more Amis people in this area. So kind of like how we spoke about with the Tao, the Taiwan people just started wearing Amis clothing and singing Amis songs. And so it was Sakinu who then, saw this happening. And so he went back and he spoke to the elders to get stories. He went to different Taiwan villages to ask about what people traditionally wore and the songs they sang. So these are just some of his efforts. So yeah, I said he asked the elders, went to the tribes to ask. He opened a hunting school, which isn't necessarily for hunting, but more to teach kind of the lifestyle of Aboriginals and the culture of Aboriginals. So he has a women's and a men's hunting school. And it's all about kind of, bringing people away from the life which he thinks is brought by other people and which is kind of forced on people, and being able to still live this, what he says, his Aboriginal kind of life, a way of life. So these are some of the girls from the hunting school. And this is Sakinu speaking. He also gives a lot of speeches all over at different schools. So he's speaking at just an elementary school, but he gives speeches all over at schools. He came to Janda. He came here and gave a speech recently, and he travels internationally. He's been to California and the Philippines, and he brings the women with him and the men with him, and they do their dances and such. He's written 3 books. I forgot to bring the books because we have all of them, and we have the movie too. But I'll bring them next week, so if you're interested. They're all in Chinese, but they're really interesting. So this is his first book, The Sage Hunter, and there was a movie made about it. This woman from Hong Kong, a director from Hong Kong, read his book and really enjoyed it, and so she came here and found him.
Can I say something? Actually, one of the articles was translated into English, and it was used in the Chinese major or Chinese language department in Harvard University.
Yeah.
So maybe you can find one article online.
Yeah, you should.
Is the movie filmed by him or it's a movie about him?
It's a movie about him.
Oh.
It's about him and his father.
Is that him?
This is him.
Okay.
And it's really funny. He actually plays his father as well. He has a mustache. He plays his father, and when he doesn't have a mustache, it's him. And this little boy plays him when he's younger.
Okay.
It's about his father teaching him how to hunt, and then it's also about the process of him getting recognition for the Taiwan people of Taimali, because they were part of the kind of grouped with the Amis and were part of the Amis festival, harvest festival. So he did come to Taipei and spoke with the government and petitioned for Taiwan to have their own festival and to be separate.
Is it also in Chinese?
There are English subtitles. So I'm happy to lend it to anybody. You guys don't have to go find it. So if you like, I'll bring it next week and you guys are welcome to watch it. And he also has he has an article published in Taiwanese school literature, which is really important because, as you may know, Taiwanese students didn't necessarily study the history of Taiwan until recently. And even then, Aboriginal culture wasn't necessarily, our Aboriginal history wasn't so much a part of it until recently. So Sakinu has the only Aboriginal work in school work here. Here's the hunter school. So this is a female hunter school. So these are all the women, a lot of them. And what's super interesting about this is that in this tribe there are more men than women. So the majority of the women in this hunter school are not Taiwan. They're a mix of either different Aboriginal groups. So there's some who are like Unun or Amis, so they're half Unun, half Hakka, or half Amis, half something. And there's a lot of Taiwanese women too. So just women who live in Taipei who heard of Sakinu or saw him speak or met him and were really interested and so are now a part of the group. And so I found that really intriguing because you don't have to be Taiwan to be a part of it. It's more a state of mind in terms of his view, and that's quite positive because that means that even if there are less Taiwan people, the culture will not die or will not stop. And the women are taught by Sakinu about how to act in traditional events. Like this is a wedding, so the women will be taught kind of how to sing and how to dance and how to organize the events. But also they have to go through like 3 tests in the mountains. So they have to, the first one, nobody has gone through the 3rd test yet. There's only been 2 so far, so nobody knows what the 3rd test is. But the first one is you have to spend a night in the cold on the mountain, so you have to survive. So he gives you 1 blanket and a plastic bag and something that will shelter you. And then you have to sleep the night in the cold and make a fire. And then there's so these are the women. So this was the princess, but as you can see here, she's not looking as princess necessarily. And these 2 women are both from Taipei. She went to Taida, and she and a friend had a club. It was a cultural club, and Sakinu spoke, and they were both really interested, and so they ended up joining. and she was an anthropology major. She was an anthropology major at Taiwan, and met Sakinu through a friend. Was invited to his house, and then again was really interested and became a part. And then the men. I didn't learn much about the men from the men because I'm a woman, and it was less. I mean, as we've talked about, fieldwork kind of problems, it was much more difficult to speak to the men. They would kind of look at me and run away. But in terms of their hunting school, I believe it's a bit similar. They also learn kind of traditional ways to act or responsibilities of Aboriginal males and ways to act during ceremonies, singing, respecting elders. And this is John, and he's in charge of the boys. And he'll just kind of order them around. So he'll be like, you, go get that plate. You, get a guitar and sing a song. So that seems to be kind of how it's done. And this is the hunting museum, and also the meeting house, which is right behind Sakinu's house, which is like a museum. So all of this is Sakinu's things. You can see swords and like animal skin, lots of wooden statues.
Millet.
Millet, yes, millet. And here there's just, I found these chairs really interesting. I mean, I didn't speak, nobody explained it to me, so I just went and saw, but I did read that the chairs signify people and how the village needs the people, so that's why they're in the meeting room, the chairs. It's the whole, you sit on the person's lap. It's kind of the reciprocity meaning. And then here's some wooden statues, people, warriors, hunters. And then these are hats they were hunting, kind of like headdresses, and if it has a white feather, it means that they're married. And then after that, the number of feathers are how many children they have. And this is right outside the door, so you can see it really is. The front just looks like a city in Taiwan. Kind of doesn't look too different, but at the back, it really is just, it's really beautiful. And then these are just pictures kind of from what I've seen when I've been in the village. So I got to experience a wedding. And it's kind of funny because it was a traditional wedding, but it was between a Taiwanese girl and an Australian man. So it doesn't really sound so traditional from Taiwan. But again, a really wonderful thing about Sakinu is he really welcomes anybody as his family, kind of, as long as they learn his philosophy and they can live his way of life and they enjoy it, then he really welcomes them as his family. So that's what he kept saying this whole night. It's just, to this woman, like, you are my family, and because you're marrying this, Australian guy, he is now my family. And it's really beautiful. Mm-hmm. And they're preparing fish, fresh tuna. And over here, there's lots of barbecuing. And here this happens at every ceremony that I've been to, is they kind of hold hands in this manner, and they sing and dance in a circle. And the women usually start, and then the men will later join in. And this woman here is the main singer. She has a really amazing voice. And I have a song. Let's see if it plays. Okay, listen to it. That's the groom. Sorry, it's kind of blurry. Oh no. Okay, well, you can't really see it, but you get the idea. It's really beautiful. And then later the men come on, but I didn't take them too long. And yeah, here's setting up for the actual ceremony of the wedding, which is really interesting. They just took out lots of old baskets and pots. This is Sakinu. Again, he held the wedding. He spoke, and this is the woman who sang. Here again, more, you can see big clay pots and more baskets for the ceremony. And then these are all the women stood in the back, and they're all singing. And this is the chief of the Lao Lan village. She's over 80 years old. The firstborn, she's lively. And this is Sakinu's father. And then these are the bride's parents. And he can only speak Taiwanese, so he couldn't understand any of the ceremony because the ceremony was all in Mandarin, actually. And none of the Taiwan people could speak Taiwanese. Sakinu can speak the Taiwan language, but most of the people here, and his father can as well, but most people here could just speak Mandarin. I'm sure some people could probably speak Taiwanese, maybe with different parents. I'm not sure where everyone came from. So this is the bride and the groom. So their outfits were not handmade, they were bought. But like the headdress was made, and so was his. And then this is a priest. So when we were there also, I didn't see any folk religion or any like praying to gods. We only saw really Christianity. And this is him giving her a necklace. And then he got a sword. And she got a sword as well, which is supposed to be for when he goes away hunting. She puts her sword by the bed, so if anybody breaks into the house. And then, like we saw in the Academia Sinica, you have the cups. So those are the two cups. So they drank together, and they each drank, this is the chief. They each drank with the chief, and they each drank with Sakinu as well. And this is Sakinu's home. Actually, I'm just showing these pictures because it's quite like a museum. It's really beautiful. And you can see all the handmade bags. And it's all animal fur, animal skin, mainly from animals that they have hunted. And so there still is hunting, it's just not as much nearly. And more of the ceramic pots and baskets, more pots, more wooden statues. And then the last ceremony was just to welcome special guests. Sakinu has a way of making lots of friends. And there's a school being opened in Taidong. It's a bilingual school being opened by a very wealthy Taiwanese man. He studied in the U.S. and Harvard, and he came back, and he's opening a school. It's kind of an alternative school. It offers like more cultural classes, and it's also acts as a trade school. And so it's an opportunity for people living in Taidong or Taidong County to not have to go too far away from their home to go to school. They can stay in Taidong so they can stay with their family. And so he had this ceremony to welcome the people starting this school, to show them whatever it was like. So this is a really famous food that I've had at most of their events. May, do you know what it's called? I don't know. Okay, we don't really know what it's called, but it's millet. It's like mushed millet and pork inside, and it's wrapped in, I believe, a bamboo leaf, some type of leaf. And this was made by the singer and her mom. And this is the table where they lay all the food. Look quickly. This is them preparing the food. But this isn't traditional Aboriginal food. This is a special. He's kind of a famous Aboriginal chef. He won like 4th place in an Aboriginal chef contest. So he was here this time. So it was really fancy Aboriginal food this time. Lots of wasabi. And here's like just pictures of the food. And again, they did the dancing in the circle, but this time, as you can see, they're not wearing traditional clothes, which I just think is really interesting because it is different than it was traditionally. They're not always wearing their clothes, but they are still, even if they can still be dressed in clothes they wear on a regular basis and be doing the same activities, and they're still continuing their culture. And this is the teenage girls and the teenage boys. This is Sakinu's eldest daughter. It was her birthday. But just you can see that the youth are really a part of it, and they make sure to have the youth be a part of it all, so that it can continue. Okay, now for me to explain the wonderful. Yes, just the next one.
Okay, so now we have a video for you guys, and before that, we're going to introduce the event. So the video is going to be about this event held in Pingtung. And this event is for the Pingtung's Taiwan tribe to be aligned with the Taidong Taiwan tribe. And Taidong's Taiwan tribe is the lowland tribe, it's Sakinu's tribe. And Pingtung's tribe is in this township, it's in Majia Township. It's in the Pingtung County, and the area is known as Makazaya in the Taiwan language. It means tilting mountain slope. So the event is held here in Majia Township, and you can see it's surrounded by Sandimen and Wutai and Taiwu. It's near the Dawu mountain in Pingtung. So this event is this is the chief of the Pingtung's Taiwan tribe, and her name is Zule, and this is Sakinu. And this is it means alliance. So in this event, it's the alliance of these two tribes.
Basically, she's like adopting Sakinu.
Yeah.
And she gives him, so he just raised his social status.
Yeah.
And he gets, because as a hunter you don't get a special name, but therefore she's giving him a special name, which is really important. And it doesn't happen very often anymore because the social status isn't as seen or as kind of used. So everybody was like, this is so important because he's been preparing for 5 years for this day.
Yeah, and everybody was really exciting, and for a lot of people actually it was also their first time to see this event because it's just not held so often anymore. And yeah, so and this is the main venue, and now we're going to show you the videos, and if you have questions we can talk about it afterward.
Yeah. What's the highest position that a man can attain in that society? Because he can't be the chief.
Yeah, you can.
He can
It's
be-
firstborn.
Oh,
So it can be
firstborn.
male or female.
Oh,
Just depends
okay.
if the firstborn is a male.
So will he be the chief one day? I mean,
Well,
he's like,
I don't think that's
Obvious
he's
choice.
born. So he's been adopted
oh,
into the chief's family, which means that he has like a higher status. I think it's more like a noble status, but it doesn't mean he's a chief. So I was kind of confused at the beginning, but he does have a very high role, like in his village. He's kind of one of the most influential people, and he's organized all of this and really brought it all back.
So the first observation should be when, at the beginning, when you show how they prepare their food, and they use the leaf, and they're wrapping the sashimi, and they're making actually Japanese introduced style adopted by Amis, and so these are the coastal and also their manners. Very much influenced by the Amis, and some of his costume that he with leggings comes from the Kyuma in Taiwan. So you can see that actually they have adopted for a very long time been accustomed to living with actually Amis have a very good lifestyle, and why not? As Taiwan, they're more rugged, living in the high mountains, and they don't have that kind of sea, fish, or banana leaf and things in the mountains. In terms of their environment would be quite different. And also they don't have such a big space in a Taiwan village because they're on the mountain for these big circle dances and all of that is from the Amis who are on the coastal flatlands. So when they're arriving, they're singing the Amis welcome song. And dressed as Taiwan. But later then, once then they start giving speeches, then it becomes all in Taiwan language. And as they become more centered toward their language. Yes.
Is the hand holding like, is that an Amis thing? I noticed that earlier in something you had shown.
yeah.
in
Almost
an
all
Ami.
of
There's
the
that.
people have that kind of circle dance with interlocking arms.
Does it have a meaning? I guess it does.
It's all related to the solidarity of the bureau, of the people. Sometimes it's like for the Zhouzu, they have it primarily for men to dance, and Amis are, for example, mixed with men and women. But actually, it's the men politically and among the Amis to organize the event. It's women who supply the event. But in this case, you can see, because the Taiwan, they have a tribe structure. They have chiefs, nobility, and commoners. And this guy's getting adopted to a chieftain status, therefore it gives them higher rank.
So could the nobility dance with the commoners?
I mean, now again, there's not necessarily that strict of separation. It's kind of more like respect, maybe like tables where they sit or something like that. But yeah, I mean, everything that we've seen, everybody dances, everybody looks down upon the common. But maybe before, I'm not sure.
depends on the village and how strictly observed the hierarchy is observed today. Of course, in all societies, if you want to move out of the hierarchy, you then just simply marry out.
I think it's quite interesting that in general for Taiwan Aboriginals that like originally historically they were so separated for such a long time, such a distinct fact of their history, and just kind of a modern view of Taiwanese Aboriginals seems like very melded, which I don't really see as a bad thing because I think it helps it to continue. But like you said, like we're seeing the Andy song and there's just so much from so many different tribes involved, but they're still, as far as they're concerned, like we're Taiwan, but they can still. You know, they're not angry if somebody, when this person comes over and wants to have dinner with them, you know. And it seems like kind of positive.
What has happened is during the Japanese administration and later, when they got moved from where they lived, their villages in the mountains, the Taiwan, were moved down into the coastal areas, and that influenced, and that was the strategy of the Japanese was to mix people into indigenous communities of different tribes so that they could not rebel, to break their social and political structure. And they were given this opportunity to move forcefully, probably, so that they could be near schools and hospitals, give them infrastructure because they didn't have roads, and they could not give Japanese administrators or those people give and provide services in high mountain places. So they were asked to abandon where they lived and move down to receive the services, to modernize. So there's a very nice, very large Bunun village, actually moved down to Bunun, 900 people, and they're also in Taidong, and they're right in the river valley, and that's where they live. They have hot springs, they have a village, they have a community center. They move down and they're staying down. I mean, the old Taipei village is in a very high, extreme mountain remote place. One of your classmates who graduated a few years ago from this program did his thesis on that village. And it's in the office. His name is Steve Martin. He's now teaching at the university in Phuket. Got his master's from the program and did his field work among the Bunun people who had moved down from their village, and interviewed those elders who actually moved, or forced moved in 1942 by the Japanese. So the Sedek Ballet rebellion was not the last. The Bunun had a rebellion in 42.
If I have budget, I'll make a movie about this.
Yes,
if I have the budget.
Yes, and that rebellion was quite serious, also at police stations and head cutting, and 1942, right? So, yeah. And when they were finally had to surrender, they said, well, if we can defeat the Japanese Empire, we'll join it, and then they were enlisted in the Japanese Imperial Army and went to New Guinea, where they could cut the heads off of Americans and Australians.